member of Congress, you are going into the danger zone. So I'm not going to take up this congressman's time. I want to welcome Congressman Barry Loudermilk. Let him tell you a little bit about the dangers of DC.
Brian, thank you very much. Hey, let me tell you one thing. I love the energy that's in this room. And I can imagine everywhere that you go, people are inspired by the energy because that energy is about something we care about. And that is our nation. I mean, this is something that we care deeply about. And I was with Herschel a little while just before I came over here. We were in an event together. In fact, I asked him, because you know, Tommy Tuberville, he was coach of Auburn. And I asked Herschel, I said, are you guys going to be able to get along? He said he's already held 2 fundraisers for it. And so when Auburn and Georgia can get along, I know we can unify as Republicans, right? So we've got to carry this energy not just through November. I mean, we need this energy between now and the election. We got to carry this energy on in for the next 2 years. Ain't that right, Andrew? We've got to have this kind of energy if we're going to turn this nation back around. Now, you're going to start hearing more coming up in the coming weeks about where we're going to go as Republicans in Congress. We brought in Newt Gingrich to help work on what do we need to do, because like his contract with America, that was genius, because that was taking major problems we had and here are the solutions. Now, Newt will tell you, there was a little fallacy in the contract with America because it was ideas and principles we agreed with, but it didn't have the actual details with it. So we had all these Republican candidates out there campaigning on these issues, but when they got elected and we got, I wasn't there then, but when they got into office, then they started arguing about the details. And then that's why some of the things didn't happen. It started falling apart. So our idea is, let's come out with the ideas and the details so everybody's campaigning on the details. This is what we're going to do to turn the nation around so when we get back in, we don't have folks that say, well, I didn't really mean it like that, right? And we've got so much to work on. Let me just touch on a couple of things because we're going to start rolling these things out. Andrew will be talking about this. I'll be talking about it. One thing I've learned years ago, now I'm not a lawyer. Nothing against lawyers. I'm a small business guy. Look, I appreciated for years lobbyists and trial lawyers because they're the only group that had a worse approval rating than Congress. That was until Nancy Pelosi. Now we're like the scum on the pond, you know. It's a little more popular than Congress is. But that also goes across the entire government. You know, we have the highest distrust of our federal government ever in history. And the sad thing is, it's warranted. And it's warranted because the corruption that runs so deep within our government. Now, every government has corruption. But what happened in the United States of America, you can trace it back to President Obama. Now, when a president comes in, he gets to make all these political appointments, just like Steve Gooch was talking about with the governor. He gets to make political appointments. Now, in the federal government, every political appointment that was made by the president, the next president can just walk in and say, you're gone. We're going to put somebody else in. Obama was putting people who held to progressive, big government, socialist ideologies. He was embedding these folks within the different departments. Just before he left office, he did something that was quite smart. It was very strategic. He converted those political appointments to government service employees, which can't be fired. Now, when I say can't be fired, someone will argue, yes, you can lose your job if you're a federal employee, but do you know it takes 360 days minimum? And if they appeal, it's 2 years. And he was so smart about the way he did this is, yes, they can appeal, and there's a certain time frame that the Merit System Protection Board has to respond to the appeal. Well, he refused to make any appointments to the Merit System Protection Board, so the board has not even had a quorum since Obama was in office. So basically, every political appointee that is now a government service employee, they can't be touched. In fact, I was on the Homeland Security Committee first year I was in Congress, and we had Obama's secretary. He was actually a pretty decent secretary, especially for the Obama administration. He really didn't care about Homeland Security. We disagreed on implementing it, but he was actually for securing the border. He was actually for enforcing the laws that we had. And I'm looking at his budget, and I see a budget item, and I asked him a question, what is this $385 million for? And he said, Congressman, I'm glad you asked that question. That's money that we paid employees to stay at home and not come to work. $384 million. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Why? He starts laying out, these are people who have lost their security clearance and literally cannot come into the office to work. But it takes that long to get rid of them, so we have to pay them full pay and benefits for 2 years. That's when I started realizing this is what Obama did to make sure that even if when a Republican wins, the president may not be able to get a lot done. And that's the problems that Trump ran into of cleaning the swamp, because he couldn't get rid of those people. If they just sat there and refused to do his orders, they worked against him. In fact, Ryan Zinke, who served in Congress with me, he was the Secretary of the Interior, Navy SEAL, tough guy, great guy. So I saw him recently, and I asked him, Brian, why did you end up resigning? Like so many of them. Remember Tom Price ended up leaving as Secretary of Health and Human Services. He said, it's quite simple. All of these people that are operatives within the Department of Interior, they're all a bunch of progressive liberal leftists. And under current law, if you're sued, you have to fund the lawsuit yourself. The government can't back you. He said, I had 40 lawsuits within a few weeks of being secretary. Some of those lawsuits were even for the socks I was wearing. He said, I can no longer afford to be a secretary anymore. So the same thing happened to Tom Price. Tom Price was actually working to get rid of Obamacare. He was working to really lessen the impact that the Department of Health and Human Services has on us. And then all of a sudden he finds himself in ethics problems for travel he made. We've talked to Tom, he'll tell you Tom didn't make those travel arrangements. You know who made the arrangements? The attorneys and the ethics committee that oversees his travel to make sure everything is legal and ethical. And guess who filed the complaints against him? The same people that make the travel. So this is all to protect the turf. Now, I'm saying all this because the number one thing we have to do as Republicans in Congress is we have to clean house of the corruption that's in the federal government. It's not going to be an easy task. You know, I've got a bill I've had for probably 4 or 5 years now called the Merit Act that would totally change the way that we hire and fire federal employees. Bad employee, you're gone in 30 days. You got a 30-day appeal. That's it. You're done. You're out of it. You want to see a turnaround in our government and the responsiveness of government? Actually tell people you're going to lose your job and you're not going to get all this great retirement that you've been just sitting on your butt waiting on for all these years. You either work, you either do what you're told to do, and you be loyal to the Constitution, and you obey our laws, or you're going to be on the street. So that's the first thing we have to do. The second thing we have to do is we have to hold our government accountable. When you look at how rogue this government has become, it ignores the Constitution. What did Joe Biden just do? He relieved debt for who knows how many people. Nancy Pelosi a few months earlier said that was unconstitutional. He couldn't do it. Then she comes out and praises it. For once, I found something I agree with Nancy Pelosi on. It was unconstitutional. He does not have that power to do that. That is the responsibility of Congress through checks and balances for us to hold the executive branch accountable. The problem is, for many, many years, and I'm talking decades, we have abdicated our constitutional authority as Congress, as representatives of the people. We've abdicated that to the executive branch just to make life a little easier. You see, being accountable to the people, and we're up for election every 2 years, well, that means we have to make some difficult decisions sometimes. Congresses in the past saw that and were like, you know, what we can do is write legislation very loosely and give all these agencies all this power to make the decisions, and they're not accountable to the American people. In fact, as you know now, they can't be fired. Well, the Supreme Court What's the Supreme Court we have right now? The Supreme Court is actually ruling on the Constitution. As we saw in the Dobbs decision, which I have held for many years, is our Supreme Court is to rule on the Constitution, only what's in the Constitution, the powers that's in the Constitution, and they cannot write anything into the Constitution that's not there. That's what the Supreme Court said that a previous Supreme Court did in the 1970s when they ruled that abortion was a right. It says there is no right of abortion in the Constitution, therefore it is a state's issue. Right after that decision, the Supreme Court made what I think is probably one of the biggest and greatest decisions that we've had happen in my lifetime. It's where they took the Clean Air Act, the EPA that Obama had pushed through, empowered the EPA with rules and regulations. Now, the difference between rules and regulations and law is they're both rules and regulations, but it becomes law when there is a penalty imposed on it, a penalty that will take your property or your freedom or your liberty or your life. Then it becomes a law. There is only one branch of our government that Constitution is empowered to make law. It's Congress. It's the legislative branch. In fact, I asked one of the agencies that was testifying before our committee. This guy is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. If you haven't heard of it, God bless you. Even the makeup of this agency is unconstitutional. The courts have even ruled that. But the Democrats are turning a blind eye. They're not making any changes. This Director Chopra is trying to use that agency to take over even the FDIC and other agencies. So we have turf battles of who can grab more and more power. They're even making up laws that don't exist. He decided we're going to come up with a term called junk fees. Now they oversee consumer. It was done by Dodd-Frank after the previous recession, not the one we're in now, but the big one. So he doesn't like it that banks can actually charge an overdraft fee. So he's coming up with a rule that says you can't charge overdraft fees anymore. But he's calling them junk fees, so he's rewriting law. So he's, before our committee, and I asked him, I said, Director Chopra, under our Constitution, who is empowered to make law? He said, Congress and the President. I mean, this is the director of an agency telling me no, the executive branch can. I mean, I even heard some Democrats go, oh no. Here's this guy saying, no, we can make law. The Supreme Court said no. The Clean Air Act, it was targeted the Clean Air Act, but we're going to be able to move this across the entire gamut of the federal government because it's the agencies that are full of corruption and they're unaccountable to the people, and we've got to rein them in. The Supreme Court said only the legislative branch can pass law. Therefore, the Clean Air Act is unconstitutional because there's penalties associated with those legislation. Only Congress can do that. So we're even working on legislation right now, not only to restore our economy, cut our spending, we've got to balance our budget, and we're going to have to do that. It's going to take some time. We've got to balance the budget. We've got to focus on America first. But we have to get back to this constitutional balance of powers, and we've got to rein in these agencies, because if we can rein in these agencies, then we make government a little bit smaller. We make government a little bit smaller, it costs less to run government, it helps us balance our budget, and then we can start getting rid of all these bad eggs that we have across the government. We have legislation like the REINS Act that says, yeah, you can make rules, the agencies can make rules and regulations, but Congress has to approve them. They have to come to Congress and get approval. And this is the way to start reining these things back in. So you're going to see all of this start coming together as we're coming out with a very bold and aggressive plan. I see Brian standing there, and I know what that cue means. Let me just say this. When Republicans take control of the House and the Senate, we have got to be bold. We've got to have a bold agenda. We have to move forward constitutionally within our powers, but we have to retake those powers because we have the power of the purse. We haven't used that effectively since I've been in Congress. These 85,000 IRS agents that we know what they're going to do are coming after you and I, right? They won't be there if we just cut the funding for them, right? All we got to do is say, hey, just got this feeling you got a question.
One question.
All right.
Congressman, when we take back the House, you're in line for a committee chairmanship. Could you share with this group what committee that would be and what you could possibly do on that committee?
Well, let me tell you, where we are right now proves God's got a sense of humor. So I serve on two committees, Financial Services, which is considered an A committee, and I was potentially in line for a subcommittee chairmanship there. But I'm also on a select committee. Now, a select committee is a committee that the speaker or the minority leader selects people to sit on. It doesn't go through our steering committee, which to get on other committees, you go before a steering committee, you put a resume. It's like getting a job, and they vote on where you go. This is the speaker or the minority leader actually says you're going to be on this committee. Put me on this committee. It's the Committee on House Administration. At one time, it used to be the most powerful committee in Congress back before Gingrich's time, and reformed a lot of corruption within the House of Representatives. But it got to be where we make sure the House runs properly and is secure. And so it was kind of this obscure committee off the side. We make sure, there was stuff going on. We were up looking into the Library of Congress and the Smithsonian's and all this, but there's two areas that all of a sudden catapulted this committee to be a very important committee. One is the committee that oversees Federal Elections Commission and Capitol Hill security. So Rodney Davis, a good friend of mine, is a congressman from Illinois who is a ranking member on the committee. I was the next ranking Republican, and we've been working really closely together. I'm very aggressive on that committee. We're trying to do some investigation into what really actually happened on January 6th. More so, who allowed these people to get into the Capitol. I kind of know where they got and she's Speaker of the House, but I'm not going to name her name. I started investigating that and got shut down really quickly. Well, so the January 6th committee, they respond by opening an investigation on me because I had the audacity to actually allow constituents to come into my office and meet with me on January 5th and took them to lunch. And on the way back, showed them a few things in the House office buildings, which equated, because we're MAGA folks, then you were on for reconnaissance. So right after we go through all this, and I start fighting back against the January 6th committee, we even got the Capitol Police to basically say there was nothing to the accusations or false accusations. They came out after us again. Then it really turned the press wacko because Rodney Davis lost his primary. And the headlines the next morning was, Congressman who enabled an insurrectionist to survey the Capitol may chair the committee responsible for Capitol security. All of a sudden, now I'm next in line for that post. I was asked by reporters, are you going to seek revenge on the January 6th committee? I said no, but we're going to seek accountability. We're going to seek accountability because Congress has to be held to the Constitution and the laws, just like everybody else. And the fact that this committee subpoenaed constituents of mine who did nothing but show up on January the 5th to visit